about why inclusion is so important, we're going to discuss what that looks like when it is applied in the camp setting. One thing that I found through my research and through going through the American Camp Association website is something called the Continuum of Inclusion, which is a process that you can expect to be followed when inclusion is applied in a camp setting. So this is, again, the progression that the establishment of inclusion is likely to follow. This was given a lot of examples by a Jewish organization that implemented inclusion at 6 camps over 3 years. And in this article, they discussed what they observed and learned as they followed the continuum of inclusion. To start it off, they trained administrative staff and hired an inclusion coordinator at each camp. Within the first year, they all reached the stage of functional inclusion. We will discuss what each stage means. So the first step of exclusion is when there is no inclusion of children with disabilities. There are no children in the program and no adaptations to support children in that program. Physical integration is when children with disabilities are now physically present and participating alongside their peers. However, activities are likely not running as efficiently as they could be because they are not the most efficiently adapted that they could be, and there is a distinct lack of camper-initiated social interaction. So while you may see some interaction during those activities, that is usually facilitated by the staff and not initiated by the campers themselves. So in the example of the Jewish camps where they implemented inclusion, they had much difficulty identifying successful stories of children enjoying each other's company and initiating behavior. And then an example would be if a child with a disability wanted to organize a closet. So the staff stepped in and got the rest of the kids to help with them, but they did not initiate that on their own. The next step on the continuum is functional inclusion, in which the children with disabilities are now functioning well and having success and experiencing enjoyment in the camp setting. The adaptations to activities are working more effectively, and there is some peer interaction. However, the children with disabilities are having a lack of meaningful and long-term social interactions. So it's sort of just in those activities in the moment that interaction is initiated, but doesn't carry over long-term and when the program is over. And again, this is the stage that 3 of the camps reached within their first year, in which the children were interacting with each other, but it was not necessarily going beyond the context of that specific camp. The final stage of social inclusion is, again, the children are all participating together, the activities are effectively adapted, and children with disabilities are able to develop friendships with their peers that carry on beyond the camp setting. They're seen as equals, and they're being included, accepted, and supported by their typically developing peers. So to accomplish the final stage takes competent counselors and volunteers that are well trained, have good outlooks and attitudes towards children with disabilities, effective activity adaptations that can be implemented by those well-trained counselors and volunteers, and likely the most important one is having appropriate supports for children, especially children with disabilities, whether it be their sensory needs or physical accessibility, just really understanding what each child's support needs are and how to give that to them. And then going into our next section, we will talk about how to adapt the activity and environment using universal design to promote inclusion and the participation of children with disabilities to maximize their performance and success.